We are back in Nashville, and we head to Atlanta, side of the SEC championship game. Trey Wallace joins us on OutKick 360. Covers the SEC for OutKick.com. Trey, hope all is well.
Yeah, everything's good. A little bit of a start of the rough day to the Friday morning, but that's okay. We got football tonight. We got SEC championship tomorrow and a bunch of other conference games. So lots of great stuff going on in football. Excited about it.
What did the loss to A&M mean for LSU's momentum coming into this game?
Man, it really, I don't know about like LSU, the football team, but maybe the luster a little bit of the SEC championship game, and maybe for LSU fans that had bought tickets to come here because they knew they were already in hotels and whatnot, thinking it would be a competitive game or tailgate spots. I spoke to a couple people just today, about coming to LSU. I think that the LSU football team, I was talking to a coach about this, and it's like, how do you get past that? It's like, he said Brian Kelly probably got on the intercom on the way back from College Station and said, all right, boys, Trey's up. Let's go. Sit up straight. We're going to go play for a championship next weekend. You have to put this behind it. And I think that's kind of the mentality that's been going on at Baton Rouge this week. I've spoken to a few people down there. They're still playing for an SEC title, and they don't forget that people had them predicted 6th in the West before the season even started. So there's a lot of motivation going into this game. Maybe it's just kind of lost a little bit of its luster because of that loss last weekend.
And when you look at Georgia on the other side, we're trying to see if there's going to be some chaos this weekend, if it's going to be chalk. So you start to try to predict, okay, who's likely to not be completely there mentally? And I just don't see that with this Georgia program under Kirby Smart as a group that's going to, overlook LSU or not show up in this SEC championship game. So I kind of mentally move on to other possible things that could happen over championship weekend. Do you feel the same, Trey, or do you see a scenario where Georgia, for whatever reason, comes out and does not play well, and LSU's right there with a chance to win?
I don't know if it's Georgia not playing well, because Georgia just has that system as well, the way that they run their offense. What worries me a little bit about Georgia is the fact that sometimes – they will hold off, and they'll need like somebody to get them a little spark all of a sudden to get them going, that offense, even if they were playing down for a little bit. I've seen that a couple times this year with this offense. I look at it, if they come out and LSU pops them in the mouth, okay, we got a ball game. If Georgia comes in and Stetson Bennett hits a play action on the 4th play of the game and it's a touchdown Georgia, could be a long day for LSU. I don't see it, in this game. I don't think Georgia's looking past anyone. Let's not forget, Georgia did not win the SEC might have won the national championship, but they dropped that game in Atlanta to Alabama.
Yeah.
Kirby Smart really wants that SEC title. I think there's other games. I think there's 2 other games where we're going to see potential upsets this weekend. I don't think it's going to be here in Atlanta, but I've seen crazier things.
Yeah, we'll get to those 2 games here shortly also. But we just had a conversation about Florida football, Trey. I know you interviewed Dan Mullen on your podcast for your 2nd episode. Recommend everybody check that out as well. Things fell apart for Dan Mullen with that team and that roster. And I think the thought was, okay, Billy Napier's there, and there's still a lot of talent on the roster. They come out and beat Utah to start the season. And then it's a disappointing season by the end of it. Now you've got all this other stuff going on with Jalen Kitna. There's a lot of things happening around the program that makes me sit back and think, just how bad is it in Gainesville in terms of culture around that program? And I guess my question to you, Trey, is how big of a reclamation, rebuild, and restart is this now for Billy Napier? Or is it just simply he needs to add a little bit more talent and tweak a few things, and they're going to be just fine?
I don't think it's anything like what Josh Heupel had to do at Tennessee. I mean, that they're I guess there are different types of rebuilds now. Josh Heupel rebuild was crazy. At Florida, they had a lot of players that did not buy. I'm trying to be nice with my words. Did not buy into the program at all. I don't care who the coach is. I think you saw that play out during the season when some players stepped away, even towards the end of the season. Britton Cox, if I'm not mistaken, left the team or was kicked off the team to Billy Napier. People forget that, 4 weeks ago. I think there's an overall problem at Florida in a sense of he's still going to have to weed out the guys that don't want to be there. And he's also going to have to rebuild this roster too. I mean, there are key spots that the Gators are struggling at. And there hasn't been a lot of leadership from inside the program, on the team, players. Like, that is something that's been key to me. And when I look at Florida, I think they could be a good team. But then it's also, I look at their last 2 regular season games that they lost to Vanderbilt, and they get beat by Jordan Travis and FSU. And I just feel like, man, the Florida State game is probably not one you should lose. Like, I think he had more talent. Billy Napier, Florida's had a bad rap for a number of years for a number of different things. Players off the field, if we want to talk about that, we can. Vitriol within the locker room, and then Dan Mullen getting let go. But I think overall, looking at it, Billy Napier is going to have to prove us something in year 2. And probably that's 8 wins next year. I think that's a nice start for them. But right now, I know what the Florida Gator program looks like from the outside. And even though this case that's going on has nothing to do with the University of Florida, period, I still think that they have more problems internally.
Trey, we saw a lot of quarterback movement in the portal within the conference itself last year. How much will we see this year?
I don't think you're going to see too terribly much. I really don't. I think you're going to see some backups. Tyler Macon from Missouri was one that left, who in my opinion, has a lot of talent. That could potentially have beat out Brady Cook next year, even though they had a kid, Sam Horn, there as well. I look around the conference. I think, you're also seeing a couple spots where quarterbacks are leaving. So these next guys are going to get the opportunity. And I think that's key. If we were in a spot where, let's just say, Hendon Hooker was returning, Bryce Young was returning, Will Levis was returning, and you can go on down the names. I mean, Ole Miss is good because Jackson Dart, will be around. You've got LSU that will have to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback going forward. Texas A&M looks fine with Connor Weigman at quarterback. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of movement. I'm interested actually to see who comes into the conference at quarterback. That's kind of what stands out the most to me. And Dan Mullen kind of said this on my podcast, and it kind of blew me away a minute. I was like, okay, this makes sense. So when USC last year did the whole Lincoln Riley package deal, where Lincoln Riley brought Caleb Williams in with him immediately, and then they went out and got Jordan Addison. Dan Mullen was talking about there is potential now for these big name quarterbacks and wide receivers to be package deals and go to schools for compensation. And what better spot to do that than the Southeastern Conference? That is something that I'm paying attention to. What quarterback out there right now is laying in the weeds, but has already potentially agreed to something where they enter the portal automatically with another school, have an NIL agreement set up. And by the way, also, they're going to bring one of their best wide receivers with them. Like, that's kind of something Dan Mullen pointed out to me that I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, I think Kentucky's an interesting spot to look for someone going out and getting a big-name guy somewhere else. It'd be very active in the quarterback transfer market. Trey Wallace of OutKick.com is our guest, our SEC columnist. Trey, Tennessee's athletic director, Danny White, does not strike me as a beta. How do you think he is going to react, and how hard will he fight back if his team is knocked down to the Cotton Bowl because Ohio State and the Rose Bowl have some sort of agreement, or they're in cahoots where, for whatever reason, Ohio State doesn't want to go to the granddaddy of them all, and instead wants to go to the Orange Bowl, which would knock Tennessee down a notch. How active do you expect Danny White to be in this whole process?
Pissed off would probably be an understatement. I think I would be very, very nice by saying that. I look, in talking with folks at Tennessee, that you don't want to go to there's nothing against a Cotton Bowl. The Cotton Bowl is in the New Year's Six, rotation for the national championship or semifinals, whatnot. Nothing against the Cotton Bowl, but there is something against the matchup. And the matchup would be Tennessee versus UCF or Tulane, if that happens. And to be honest with you, the only people that would care about that matchup are the UCF fans, because they'd be going against Josh Heupel and Danny White if you want to add it all together. Tennessee doing everything that they did this year and then getting kind of screwed out of the sugar and then screwed out of, like, the first domino was Alabama being ranked in front of Tennessee, which sent them to the sugar. Okay, so Tennessee's already agitated to that. The second domino is Ohio State saying, well, guys, we would really not like to go back out to Pasadena. Could you send us somewhere else? Okay, there's a second domino. So it sends him to Miami. So Tennessee's now screwed out of Miami. So now it drops them all the way back to the Cotton Bowl, which would just be a bad matchup. Trust me, Tennessee folks have been on the phone this week. I don't know the right word to put it. Lobbying maybe is probably the best word, with a little more aggression to figure out how they could potentially get to the Orange Bowl, because there's no way to get to the sugar now unless you jump Alabama, and I don't see how that's going to happen. So, it's a tough spot to be in after everything that they had done this year, because I do think it would be a worthy matchup for whoever they would play in the Sugar or the Orange Bowl, especially if it was like Clemson. They played North Carolina in the last 10 years. They had bad memories on that one when Butch Davis was on the sideline. But, I still think that Tennessee deserved something better than the Cotton Bowl at 12 o'clock local time, when other games are going to be going on that are probably a lot better. So, Danny White is he acts like he's quiet and sitting kind of back in the woods a little bit, but trust me, he's at the forefront of this, and agitated would be the correct word to use.
And some of the chaos that you referenced that we'll talk about later, Hutton and I, with other conference championship games, could dictate Tennessee not falling to the Cotton Bowl based on what happens there. So we don't know yet. We'll know on Sunday. Another thing that I have for you, Trey, and I didn't even know this was a thing until today. I learned something. I've watched college football for years. Brett McMurphy every week puts out a new bowl projection. He's usually very, very good at doing this. He just moved Tennessee to the Cotton Bowl this week because of what he's hearing about Ohio State not going to the Rose. But the thing that jumped out to me was, apparently teams can just request not to play an opponent, and then they'll move them around. If you have a strong enough request in writing that you want to avoid a certain opponent, Missouri will not play Kansas. Everybody wants to see the renewal of that rivalry, a border war between Missouri and Kansas in a bowl game, but they're scheduled to renew their rivalry in 2025. Kansas is okay playing the game in a bowl game. And Brett McMurphy didn't outright say it, but he did report, I know Kansas doesn't have a problem with it, but I'm told it won't happen because someone refuses to play an opponent. So it's Missouri refusing to play Kansas. I mean, could Tennessee just say, we don't want to play Tulane? And then they get moved to a better bowl game, or the Cotton has to move? That's a very odd thing. And I know the New Year's Six is different than the lower bowls, but that jumped out to me that we know that ADs can go through and say, this is what we want in a list of 3 in order. Yeah. I didn't know that you could say, this is who we don't want to play, though.
It is very funny. Missouri don't want to play that game because they want to give it up, when it's going to happen in 2 years anyways. They want to save it for when it's going to happen on the schedule down the road. Okay, I kind of understand that maybe a little bit. You don't want to give it away. You're trying to tease it until you get to that spot. Why give it up in the bowl season when you can have it in a regular season? Whatever. Okay, I get it. But the thing about these teams, and because all these teams can lobby. Like, if you're not in a New Year's Six bowl, everybody knows that teams fill out a form, or they get on a conference call and they say, well, man, we'd really like to go to the Music City Bowl. And if we can't have the Music City Bowl, we would love to go to Charlotte. If we can't go to Charlotte, we would love to go anywhere but Birmingham or Shreveport. That's how it's been in the past. But now you look at what we've got with the New Year's Six. Ohio State comes out because they have some sort of clause and says, well, we don't want to go back and play this matchup potentially again. And we were just there. So we're not going to go. You guys can deal with that and figure out who you want to put in. I mean, if Tennessee wants to put their big boy pants on, they're on the phone this week. They're talking to the Orange Bowl. They're talking to the Sugar Bowl. Hey, guys, look, I'm going to sell you 35,000 tickets for your bowl game. I can promise you that we're going to sell probably 35,000 tickets to your bowl game. You need to take us. Alabama is not motivated, and I'm not talking about the players when I say this. Alabama fans are not motivated to go to New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl for a game that doesn't matter in the playoffs. They don't care. They don't care to go to Miami either to go watch Alabama play a team that doesn't involve the playoffs. Tennessee fans are motivated this year. They will travel in droves, and that's why the Sugar and the Orange Bowl know. I put in a quote the other day. I talked to a bowl rep that said he was jealous because he couldn't have Tennessee this year. And it wasn't the Cotton Bowl or anybody like that. He was jealous because he thought the Sugar and the Orange would end up getting Tennessee. But now maybe that doesn't happen. So, look, if I'm Tennessee, I'm throwing out the money figures that I could have coming into your town, how long we're staying in your town, and I'm setting a precedent. If Ohio State could say, hey, we don't want to go to Pasadena and play one of the biggest bowl games in national college football history, why can't Tennessee just say, hey, man, I'm sorry, Cotton Bowl. We don't want to come all the way to Dallas and play Tulane or UCF at noon on a whatever day it is. We would like the premier game of playing a night game in the Sugar Bowl or playing at the Orange Bowl. You got to put your foot down in these situations, and I'm interested to see how Tennessee plays it out in the next 3 days.
Trey, how would you rate Hugh Freeze's performance in his introductory press conference at Auburn in his first few days on the job? Obviously, keeping Cadillac Williams on that staff was a big coup for him.
That's a Golden Globe performance on stage. That's what that was. That's close to Oscar worthy. I'm going to go Golden Globe and stay in that category, that range. But Oscar, that was a good one. He checked off all the boxes: God, family, football, and then his social media was brought up, which was just fantastic. He's a great football coach. Don't get me wrong, really good football coach. But I think he's gone back a couple times this week and tried to say, I'm sorry for sending DMs and whatnot. Man, you're saying you're sorry because you just got the Auburn job and you want this to go away as quick as possible and for people to stop talking about it. You didn't say sorry during the season at Liberty while you were playing when these questions were potentially brought up. You're saying it now because you're in a different situation. I think he's going to do a good job at Auburn. I think he's going to hire a staff and a couple staff members that people are familiar with around the Southeastern Conference, besides the obvious Cadillac Williams. I mean, he just got rid of Jimmy Brumbaugh the other day, and you got to feel for Jimmy Brumbaugh. That man's been through the ringer in the last 3 years, from Jeremy Pruitt to having a deal with Brian Harsin. But you look at it overall, Hugh Freeze, he did what he was supposed to do, said what he was supposed to say. Now it's all about, can he just do it the right way at Auburn? And these stories aren't going away either. I can promise you that. People are digging right now on Hugh Freeze. And whether you like it or not, that's just the way our business works. And I'm interested to see how he handles it over the next couple months with the transfer portal, when it comes to the high school part of recruiting, and when it comes to just being the man in Auburn. So good luck to him, but great performance in his press conference. I do give him a lot of credit for that.
Trey Wallace has been our guest. Trey, enjoy the SEC championship game tomorrow. We'll be looking forward to the coverage this weekend, man.
Yeah, lots of coverage coming this weekend. Going to have some scene setters, some stuff going on here in Atlanta. We got the game at 4 o'clock Eastern time. We'll have you covered through that and all the other games going on this weekend. By the way, Utah beats USC tonight, and then Kansas State beats TCU tomorrow. So that's what I'm going with in my predictions. Good luck.
Appreciate it. We will run through all of the conference championship matchups coming up in about 15 minutes or so. Thanks to Trey Wallace of OutKick.com there. Read his work again all weekend with covering the SEC championship between Georgia and LSU. When we come back, there are plenty of really good games on the slate for this upcoming weekend in the NFL. And I think there are more than the usual money line upsets out there for the taking. I'll tell you who I'm betting as the underdogs against the NFL favorites straight up. That's next on OutKick 360.
Two teams went out. One was actually a team from the unit that I now play on TV that was attached to us. They went out. They went on the front side, or went around to go to the front side of this other house, and my team was basically going towards the back side of the house. So very shortly, what happened was it was the wrong house, and when we hit that one house, the actual house it was, which was next door, which is not exactly next door because Sutter City is kind of weird of how it's built. But, you know, they heard us. They were getting ready, prepping, you know, their gear, you know, and so they were ready to go. So when that team came around, a bunch of dudes opened up out of the front, what I assume would be the living room, with AKs and shot. I think they shot 3. If I'm not mistaken, they shot 3 of the members of that team. 2 of them were pretty much out of the fight at that point. But they were, I mean, it was heavy. I wasn't on that side of the house, but just hearing it, I was like, oh man, that's extreme. So I ran into the back door, which came into the kitchen, cleared through there, went in the hallway, and those same guys, as we approached that room, shot through the walls of that hallway, shot the guy literally right next to me. So then we backed off, and then we were and I'd have to draw it out, but we were in a tactical position that was just there wasn't a lot we could do. So we were trying to kind of figure out how to solve it. And the next thing I know, I remember just the whole room, or actually it wasn't really a room, it was the hallway, you know, so it was more like a tube straight at me, and just everything exploded. And I actually remember hitting the ground and looking up down the hallway. I was just confused. I didn't know what had happened. And I can say, you know, getting shot at, okay. It's one thing, but the explosion made me feel small. It was like a superhero just grabbed me and was like, or it was like the Hulk grabbed me and was like, it felt like a supernatural power. And it blew, so it was a nighttime hit. It blew my nods and my nod mount off my face. So I went from, you know, under nods to not being able to see anything. It obviously, my arm, I thought it blew off. I'm trying to think of what else it wrecked, but wrecked several things. But and everything was pitch black for me, and I really didn't know what was going on. I just felt my arm was blown off, so I got up and walked outside to the back, and there was a wall that we had hopped to get in. That wasn't happening, so I just put my back against the wall and tried to take care of myself. But I never lost consciousness. The only time actually I did lose consciousness is when, and I still to this day don't know how they got me over that wall. I have no idea. But other than that, probably 5 minutes that they got me over the wall, I never lost consciousness.
Sixth and Peabody, our location. Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. OutKick 360 rolls on. Coming up, Paul Caligiuri will join us, and we'll reminisce on the U.S. men's national team for soccer from the 90s and preview the upcoming match tomorrow against the Netherlands for the United States. Again, that's a 10 a.m. Eastern start time on Fox. We'll do that at the start of hour number 3, so we're about an hour and 10 minutes away from that.
A U.S. soccer legend.
Yes. Plus, we've got plenty of discussion on all of the conference championship matchups across college football. Chad, we will go in depth on the biggest games across the NFL later in today's show, but I do think there are some games where I'm leaning more towards the underdog winning outright this week than usual. Normally, my moneyline upsets, outkick.com/bets is where you can go. Outkick.com/bet is where you can join all of the DraftKings offers. I'm picking 2 or 3 normally. I've got 4 for you. I've got a 4-pack for you. And again, it's not a parlay, just individual, straight moneyline bets here where if we win 50% of them, you're going to get plus money. So if we're 2-2 on the weekend, we're going to make a little cash here. And I'm strong on these. Now, one of them, to be fair, is probably a pick 'em by the time Sunday rolls around, and that's where we start. The Steelers and the Falcons. I've got Pittsburgh in this game. Kenny Pickett, to me, while he hasn't been great, he also hasn't been awful. He hasn't thrown an interception in the last 3 games. He also hasn't thrown a touchdown pass in 3 of the last 4 games. But I think he's going to finish the season strong. The Falcons' defense is a group the Steelers should be able to throw against. Pickett to Pickens in this game will be fun to watch. And the Falcons want to run the football and shorten the game. Meanwhile, Najee Harris says he's playing, but the Steelers haven't been able to run it. And that's why I think, because of just the style of offense right now, I'm taking Pittsburgh over Atlanta because I think they're going to put the ball in the air and actually try to gain some momentum and build on a season that's not going to end in the postseason. Again, You get the road dog, Pittsburgh. I love Tomlin here. I like Arthur Smith too, but give me the money line if, in fact, you're getting plus money on the Steelers. Bengals over the Chiefs. Measuring stick game for Cincinnati. They won this game twice last year. Keep in mind, the regular season game was Jamar Chase's breakout performance. 3 touchdowns, had like 260 combined yards through the air. He's back this week. And the Bengals have already won 3 of the last 4 games without him. The Chiefs, meanwhile, turned the football over twice last week. That's why they lost twice to the Bengals a year ago. They turned the football over. Cincinnati's defense, I think, is becoming more and more opportunistic weekly, and I'm taking another great performance between 2 solid quarterbacks. Bears over the Packers. It's just this simple. I realize Rodgers has absolutely owned this franchise. Justin Fields is back. He's completely off the injury report this week. Meanwhile, Rodgers added another element to his injury report, and I think the Packers are closer to seeing Jordan Love at quarterback than we are seeing Rodgers and that offense really start clicking. Watkins would concern me in this matchup against the Bears defense, and that's about it. I'm taking Chicago at home over Green Bay straight up. And why not? If the Houston Texans are going to play with energy and passion and a want to go out and thump an opponent, there's one left on the schedule to do that for a one-win team. They're hosting them on Sunday. They're hosting him on Sunday, and Deshaun Watson and the Browns. All eyes will be on him, and this is a Texans roster that is gearing up for a quarterback in the draft. I still think they can run the football at a very high level with Dameon Pierce, and it's still a Texans team that has been close in second halves while not close in the scoreboard throughout a game. So, and the Browns aren't that good. They're much better than the Texans, but I do think even with bad teams, you sometimes get one locker room rallying around one last hurrah. This is that for Houston.
Hutton, I know you don't like to parlay it, but if you parlay all 4 of those together, a $3 bet will win you $114 if you hit all 4.
All right. Let's buy. That'll get you a tab.
I'm doing it.
Let's go.
I'm doing it. Parlay.
Coming up, conference championships. We'll start with the Pac-12 matchup tonight, USC and Utah. It's next on OutKick 360.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the second hour is here. OutKick 360 rolls on. And we're an hour away from Paul Caligiuri joining us, U.S. Soccer Hall of Famer, and, of course, shot heard around the world with the goal against Trinidad and Tobago. We've got the legend joining us to preview what we hope is a legendary match tomorrow against the Dutch.
You say Tobago, I say Tobago. Does anyone actually say Tobago? I don't think so. That's one where no one messes it up.
Probably.
You said it the right way, and that's the only way I've ever heard it. But I feel like there should be a segment of the population that actually says Trinidad and Tobago. But I've never heard of that. Maybe we'll start.
I'm sure there's someone.
Yeah, maybe I'll just start calling it that. That's what I call it.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
That's always the best explanation when you butcher someone's name or the name of a country, is when someone responds very defensive and says, well, that's how I say it.
That's how I say it.
Thinking, okay, well, that's not it. We're trying to tell you what it is. That's not it. Iran and Iran, for instance, that's, well, okay, it's not that. Here's another one that always gets me, because I saw during our breaks, we see the stories at OutKick with the Uruguay team going nuts on the officials at the World Cup. People that know how to pronounce South American countries tell me that it's Uruguay. And I've always heard it as Uruguay. But
that's how
when
I've said it too.
someone goes with like the real pronunciation, they say Uruguay.
What we need to do is just listen to the opening ceremonies from an Olympics. And we just go based on whatever that woman says in translation.
I love when it's, that in the foreign country, it's in their language with the announcement, and then you just hear the name of the country out of nowhere, and it's some woman getting really excited and jazzed up, and then it's Uruguay.
What if they said it both ways for Qatar and Qatar? They'd give you both.
That would make my mind melt if I heard it that way, because I'm still confused about Qatar and Qatar.
The Week 13 slate for the NFL is jam-packed with some really good games. We'll give you the most impactful for the postseason and the impact for what could be a big storyline Monday across the NFL. That's coming up in about 20 minutes. Let's preview the conference championships, though, across college football, which kicks off tonight in the Pac-12. I'm not sure how I feel about the Pac-12 always, playing their game on Friday. You get the night, right? But I'm still thinking about all the Saturday slate and having to remind myself to find a TV because of the impact of this game with USC, who they've already lost to Utah. Granted, home field advantage in Salt Lake for Utah in that game. Now we see this game played in Vegas. USC's a 2.5-point favorite. The Trojans win. They're going to the college football playoff. And Caleb Williams, yet another opportunity to claim his Heisman Trophy against a solid Utah program. It's one that the committee has respected greatly, even with their first unveiling of the college football playoff rankings when Utah already had – did they have 2 losses at that time or no? I think they did.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, and they still look at Utah as a strong program, and they are very well coached and defensively have been strong. But here's the offense of USC on full display, and the question is, do you think it's more of the back and forth shootout that we saw already, or do you think it's played tighter? Do you think USC plays a bit tight in this game, given what's at stake? I mean, this is a 4-win team from a year ago that has taken on the mindset and the mentality of their new head coach and quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. I think you got to go. USC is one of those teams. They're top 4 in every offensive category. Scoring, yards per game, all of that, efficiency, yards per play. You got to go into a game against USC expecting a shootout, and then evaluating: do we have the weapons to score a lot of points? I think Utah has that they don't do it in what is now the traditional sense, which is hurry up, spread it out, run it well, but also the ability to go deep. USC does that. We've seen Tennessee do that. Similar offenses that way. Cam Rising to Dalton Kincaid at tight end is something to watch this game. To me, Dalton Kincaid could be the X factor in this game for Utah. Now, having put all that out there, I think USC wins. I don't see Utah beating this USC team twice in the same season. Sometimes it's as simple as that. It's hard to do, and I don't think Utah is the team to do it against USC. I don't look at them and think, boy, this is just a nightmare matchup, and they're never going to beat Utah because of the way they play. I think USC wins this game.
It's hard to overlook the fact that the vast majority of that roster is the same. It's the makeup of the same players that have lost 4 of the last 5 games to Utah.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, man, Utah knows how to play this crew. Now, it may not be Lincoln Riley on consecutive games in the same year.
Yeah, they got Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams once.
Right.
Of those 4 or 5. That's important, but they did get them. It was also in Salt Lake City. We had Bobby Carpenter on talking about, it's not a long drive from Salt Lake City to Vegas where this game's going to be played. It's probably going to feel like a home game for Utah, which surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
But that also is going to be a factor in this game. And I'm looking forward to watching it. We're trying to pick the chaos agent, right? What game is going to surprise? Not that it would be a huge surprise if Utah won a close game because the spread is so small. I just don't think it's this game. I think Caleb Williams and USC are playing at a different level right now, and I don't see them losing twice to Utah.
And it was, the 43-42 was the first final, and it was like LSU beating Alabama where Utah went for 2 and got it to win that game at the end.
Yeah.
I hope the vast majority of the country knows this game's being played tonight, if it's that type of game.
I want it to be a really good game. And I think we're going to get that. I think USC wins a close game tonight. But you're right. That is one that championship weekend. It's not championship Saturday. We got a MAC championship game going on right now, maybe about to be over, actually. I think it started at noon on a Friday. So it's championship weekend, not just championship Saturday.
Kansas State TCU. Kansas State was up 3 possessions at one point in a game earlier this year against TCU, and this is one of the example games that you can point to. At the time, you're like, well, TCU came back and won this game, but they're gonna fall. They haven't. And they're also favored by 2.5 in the Big 12 championship, which kicks off tomorrow. Chad, I'm confident in the Frogs. I am. They continue to answer the bell, answer the call, and they have done it different ways. It's not always, well, they're down 3 possessions going into the 4th and they're going to come back and win. They're also able to grind out wins, which is what we've seen whenever they played in Austin and took on Texas and won 17-10. And because of that, I just refuse to bet against them in this case. I think they have bought in completely. Duggan is tremendous, and Sonny Dykes and the whole momentum there, they're headed to the college football playoff.
Yeah, Sonny Dykes might be the National Coach of the Year, what he's done in year one at TCU. I'm trying to find it. I know it was 38-28. I'm trying to see, did Adrian Martinez, this is the game he was injured in, I believe, also, where Will Howard came in. I was trying to see the quarterback situation for Kansas State in that game. These are two teams that both can run it really well.
Yes.
So, that's – I look at the Utah-USC game and think Utah can score a lot. They just do it in a different way. TCU, electric running it. Kansas State the same way. Adrian Martinez, a big threat with that too. Yeah, this is the chaos agent game. This is the one where I think Kansas State might pull this one off against TCU. But it almost, if we're going by just the trope of the game, of an adage that I think will hold true. The first one with USC, they're not going to lose twice. It's hard to beat a team twice. They're not going to lose twice to Utah. And this one, Hutton, it is that TCU team just ain't losing. They find a way, right? Every time
in that conference,
they get in trouble, they find a way out of it. This might be the one where they get caught.
And the thing, just thinking about the matchups of this game. And you mentioned the chaos. This could cause the stir. Because TCU is now 3, if they lose, it really comes down to not if you lose, but how you lose. And what happens, of course, tonight with USC. But let's hypothetically say USC wins and TCU loses. And that's it as far as shakeup in the top 4. Is Ohio State jumping TCU Sunday?
Yep.
That quickly?
I think they would.
See that you don't even know the details of how they lost.
No, but you know why I know that? Because I think this committee values Ohio State over TCU. I think if TCU were Texas, it wouldn't happen. I think the Ohio State brand would shine through and they would jump back in there. There's also this weird thing, I think, with the committee. And, I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. If you lose most recently, it's like the biggest X mark against you, right? It's about, they lost this week and Ohio State lost 2 weeks ago. So now Ohio State's going to jump them by 1 spot because this one happened this week.
Well, so where was Bama when Tennessee beat them? Were they 1 or 2?
They were 2, I think.
Okay. And they fell to where? 4? Initially?
Yeah, no, they may have been 1 at that point. I think they were 1 and fell to 4.
And TCU was, TCU
was 3. TCU would drop to 5 in this example.
Right, but Tennessee, I'm looking at the initial rankings. I'm trying to go back in my mind here. TCU in the initial one was unbeaten, but they were like 6th in the country, according to the college football playoff. And that was with a 1-loss Bama and with Tennessee beating Bama, and Tennessee was ahead of TCU at the time. Davey, you remember where they were at the time? Yeah. We'll put him up.
College football playoff rankings hadn't come out at that point. Tennessee was 6. Alabama was 3 when Tennessee.
No, I'm talking about the first college football playoff rankings.
Alabama would have been 6th.
Alabama was 6th, and TCU was
they already had the loss
behind them, right, at 7 then.
Yeah.
And now, see, that's what I'm saying. Like Ohio State loses, but they are still behind. It's not like they didn't put Ohio State ahead of TCU this week. They didn't put Ohio State ahead of USC this week.
No, but Ohio State has a loss.
So does USC.
I know, but you're talking about if TCU loses.
No, but you're saying yes, I am.
I'm just saying simply if TCU loses, they're going to go from 3 to 5.
Okay.
USC, if they win, will go from 4 to 3, and then Ohio State will go to 4. That's what I am predicting will happen. I'm not saying it's a definite, but if you ask me my opinion of what that committee will do with 5 Big Ten people on it out of 13,
I don't know.
It is going to Ohio State.
It comes down
there
to
will
how
be a bias.
you lose
It'll go to
the
Ohio
game.
State.
How do you lose the game?
I think if they lose by a single point on a fluke play at the end, Ohio State will get back in that playoff. That's what I think will happen.
I don't know how you do that when you just got your ass kicked against Michigan last week.
I think if TCU were Texas, it wouldn't happen. quite frankly.
I don't know if you lose by a point to Kansas State for a team that continues to answer the bell, and Ohio State gets boat race in the second half.
By all means.
That they do that.
Pick it up, and when this happens, come in and complain about it on Monday.
I will.
Because I'll complain about it too. I hate it.
But
I hate the fact that Tennessee's behind Alabama, but that's much less impactful because we're talking 7 and 6, right? It's not as big of a deal. We're talking about a playoff spot on the line here. I don't think it should happen if that's the case, but I think it will happen. By the way, Adrian Martinez has a chance of playing in this Big 12 championship. Will Howard will start, but there may be a special package for him in this game in the Big 12 championship.
Chad, you alluded to this. Adrian Martinez having an incredible season outside of Nebraska. He gets a chance to make an impact in this game.
Yeah, it's not looking good for Scott Frost and his regime in terms of what he was able to do away from the Huskers and away from his tutelage. It's been much better for him.
So I believe that Georgia, whenever they faced Tennessee earlier this year, had been preparing for the Vols for a couple of weeks, truthfully. I don't think they prepared for Missouri. They won't say that. I don't think they were worried about the Tigers. I think they were concerned about the Tennessee offense defensively. And Kirby Smart, the best defensive mind right now, as head coach at Georgia, came up with a game plan that was incredible. And it was a no contest. I truly believe LSU has been looking ahead to Georgia. And that's what happened last week at College Station. Because how do you prepare for a Texas A&M group that was lifeless and an LSU Tigers program that had completely turned on the life support at one point into true energy and a true college football playoff contender? They lose out on the college football playoff by doing this. Again, no one was predicting LSU to lose to A&M in that game. But, Chad, I do think they've been preparing for Georgia far longer than they started preparing for the College Station matchup against A&M.
I think they're going to play a lot better in this game. I don't think it's going to be awful to watch in this SEC championship. I think you're going to see a better and different LSU team than you saw in College Station a week ago. But piggybacking off what you said, I also believe Georgia didn't prepare for Georgia Tech as hard as they prepared for LSU this past 2 weeks, getting ready for this game. I think it was a lot more of the Tennessee plan with Missouri. Georgia Tech is so bad. They knew they were going to beat them. They won easily in that game. I think it's a little bit of both sides in terms of preparation.
I think Georgia, I've already said, I think Georgia did that with Missouri.
Yeah.
And
that's
they
what
got
I'm saying.
away with it.
I think both teams, it cost LSU and they lost A&M. It didn't cost Georgia. I'm saying both have been looking at this matchup for 2 weeks.
Give Kirby Smart the extra offseason to, you see the offense for the first time with Heupel and then you adjust or whatever it might be. And he had the greatest defense we've seen the first year against Heupel. But Brian Kelly's up there amongst the best just pure college football coaches. And what he gets out of rosters and how he makes and maximizes the talent either at Notre Dame, at Cincinnati, now at LSU. I am really intrigued to see how because they've done that at quarterback. They figured out how to get the most at quarterback. What game plan do they have against Smart's defense that keeps them in this game? Because a roster, Chad, we saw it last year. I mean, Bama, your SEC champion a year ago, that was an LSU team that went to Tuscaloosa. It had no business being in like a 20-10 final or whatever it was. But it was still a roster that's chock full of talent. And I think they believe in the overall system and everything that Kelly's telling them.
Yeah, no, it's from that Tennessee game on, it's been a different team, and they've adjusted well.
I think that I guess what I'm saying, they're not winning the game.
No, I think
they're covering.
Yeah, I'm absolutely picking. It's 17.5 last I checked, right? Is that what it says on the screen right now? Yes.
17 on the screen.
Yeah, they're going to cover the 17. I think they're going to play a lot better. I'm reading a story right now at OutKick.com where Grace Kelly, Brian Kelly's daughter, who's very active on social media, is bashing College Station, Texas. And she said, what a strange town. Like, there's something about it that you're just like, you live here for a reason? To people that live there. I will say, it's a different place. We were there last year. It is a different vibe and environment in College Station around that program.
It is cultish. Like, I was told that going for the first time. It's very difficult for someone to describe what it's like because you're in like a little snow globe. And
they're very serious about the stuff that everybody sees as silly.
Yes.
There's no real sense of humor with them about their stupid
But there's
traditions.
no like inside joke on the tradition when you're there. You're just observing it. And then when you're outside and you're back at the airport, you're kind of like, what was that? Was that a retreat?
Yeah, I've never
was
met
this
I've never met an A&M
is this
fan.
Did I just go to a sweat lodge? What was this?
Yes, you were hallucinating the entire time we were there, I think. Yeah, I've never met an A&M person who's like, yeah, I mean, we show up and do this, but it is kind of silly. It's very, if you make fun of it, they're very protective of their traditions, which, most programs are.
Chad, you have been on the Purdue push to make this more of a championship game for the Big Ten against Michigan than what I initially thought whenever I saw the pairings come out based on the results of last weekend. I don't think this is Michigan-Iowa from a year ago, but, I mean, there's not a lot drawing me to this game.
The spoiler makers aren't bringing you into this game?
I don't think so.
You don't think Jeff Brom's going to have a plan?
I'm not feeling it.
To make something happen against Michigan? Look, I think Michigan's going to win this game. I do see a scenario, though, where Purdue offensively with Aiden O'Connell and their ability to throw it and Jeff Brom's ability to game plan against big opponents, they can put up some points in this thing and make it somewhat interesting. But I think ultimately Michigan and Georgia are going to be undefeated when they play for the national championship. That is my prediction right now. For that to happen, obviously, they're going to win tomorrow in both their championship games.
Clemson, North Carolina lost its luster with the recent losses, not just for South Carolina and what they've done to Clemson, but North Carolina, who went unbeaten on the road for the first time in program history. They have now limped into the ACC championship game with back-to-back losses.
I have no idea what to expect in this one. North Carolina has really disappointed the last couple of weeks. Clemson loses at home to South Carolina. I mean, I think Clemson wins because North Carolina's offense we've seen take a step back here recently, and Clemson is a good defensive team, and they can run the ball, but their passing game is bad. Offense hasn't been that efficient all year. I mean, who knows? Is North Carolina, after taking that step back the last couple of weeks, are they now going to revive and be the North Carolina team we saw in spurts this season? And, I mean, I'm picking Clemson to win the game, but it's a coin flip as to which teams show up for this ACC championship game.
Well,
I've had the hardest time.
What happens if both teams show up that played Notre Dame?
Well, you look at a game and a matchup, and in your mind, if you've watched the teams, you try to visualize what you're going to see on the field between the two teams and what the game could look like. And I've had the hardest time even visualizing what this game is going to be on Saturday night.
I'm just watching for Drake May.
You're going to have a chance to watch him for another 2 years because he is a true freshman.
So
he's got he's going to be in North Carolina unless he gets a.
I'm ashamed I haven't watched more of him in his freshman year.
He's going to have 3 years at North Carolina.
Everyone's talking DJ, but I'm going with May.
Yeah, I do think that there's you got to give the Heisman talk, right? You got to give the Heisman to the best player regardless of class and all that. But I did kind of view, this is my own bias, I view Drake May as he'll have another chance. When he's doing so well, I'm like, he's going to be around, guys. Let's not rush to it. And let's talk more about the Heisman sophomore, junior year for Drake May when he continues to compile these stats.
And then Hooker got hurt, and then it was like, oh, where's Drake May?
Now Drake May can come on up. Got a guy out now. Blake Corum's down.
Yeah,
all right, come
let's
on.
Go. Let's go.
Yeah. Who's going down next?
Hit us with your thoughts on Conference Championship Weekend at OutKick 360 on social. Coming up, we'll switch gears. We turn the page to the NFL slate, which is chock full of some really big matchups that can impact playoff races as December is now here. That's next on OutKick 360.
Trent Dilfer just won another state title as the head coach at Lipscomb Academy in his final game as the head coach at Lipscomb Academy. Headed to UAB. News got out this week that you're now a college head coach. What are the emotions? As of tomorrow. Unofficially, as of Tuesday at like 11:15 p.m. You didn't want news to get out. And we talked about that on the broadcast today. How did you approach it? And we certainly saw how your team responded to it.
It was disappointing, obviously, but I wanted to handle like what I've been preaching this community for 4 years, is control what you can control and trust the humans within this program. So I made a decision late Tuesday night that I would wake up and address the team first. I'll be honest with them like I've been honest about everything, and trusted their character and the leadership, senior leadership, coach leadership, and it was amazing. Yesterday will go down. Yesterday was exponentially better than today. I'll put it in perspective. Yesterday was one of the finest moments of my life to see a group of people who were hurting when they hurt, work through for 2.5 hours. By the end of practice, we're all hugging and crying, the music is playing, we're singing karaoke, and you could see that they needed a little take care of the shock and awe, they needed to heal, but then they needed to love, and that's really been the theme since the time I told them until the end of this game.
I was surprised when I heard you were taking the Lipscomb Academy job, and I was surprised again when I saw you were going to UAB. Does any of this surprise you, or is this simply the plan all along?
It's never been the plan. The plan was to retire in Austin and play golf every day, and I did that until 2019, and I was empty. I wasn't fulfilled, and I needed mountains to climb, and I'd gone around the country and led groups and told them that hard things are great things, and the edge of uncomfortable is where you find greatness, and here I am playing golf 218 times, and driving around watching my girls play volleyball, and I needed a mountain to climb. And Lipscomb was a big mountain, but it was a great mountain. And now that we're at the top, I need another mountain to climb. It's hard, it's really hard, but I want a great challenge. I want to keep being a great husband and father, and they'll tell you that I'm better when I'm climbing mountains.
What's UAB? Why is UAB the mountain, and why is it now?
Well, one, they pursued me really hard. I never pursued them. I had a lot of calls in the last 3 weeks of gauging my interest, and I really wasn't interested in anything but UAB. There's a couple differentiators. They have a president, Dr. Watts, who is about excellence, period. Everything they do at UAB under his leadership is excellent. You want that. To win it in college football, you need a president is committed to excellence. You need an AD that understands the impact of football, not the importance. Please hear me right here. It's not more important than anything. Listen, I got 3 Division I athlete daughters. I don't want football to be more important than volleyball. But the impact of football is massive on a community, on an institution, and Mark Ingram understands that. You want a donor base that's proved themselves already. And this donor base proved themselves by bringing football back, and they want to be great. And then you want a community with a big vision. And the vision is not just to win the American. The vision is to be in the conversation for the college football playoff when it expands. And people are going to say that's crazy, and they're going to say that's a big old mountain that you can't climb. Guess what? We're going hiking. We're going to climb, and we'll talk in a couple of years. My guess is we're on top of that mountain.
Coach, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Congratulations on another state championship.
Thank you so much.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Sixth and Peabody, our location in Nashville, and across the great OutKick network. If you're listening on this fine radio station, we thank you for that. Hit us up on social at OutKick360, and we're streaming live at OutKick.com. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Previewing Sunday's top NFL games and plenty of playoff implications as we get to the week now in December where everyone's attention starts to look ahead to January in the stretch run where unless you are the Bills and Patriots this week, or one of, I think, 5 teams that have a bye remaining. You've got 6 games left, and, of course, Bills and Patriots now with 5, and you're trying to get to that magic number. I think in the AFC it's 10, wild card, just to feel secure with all the tiebreaker scenarios. And if you are in the NFC, it's a much tighter race, but the records, I don't think, have to be nearly as great on paper for the wild card team to get in, and the case in point could end up being one of the matchups that we're seeing here this weekend. We'll start, though, with Philadelphia hosting the Tennessee Titans. Philly, a 4.5-point favorite at home, 1 o'clock Eastern kickoff at Lincoln Financial Field. Danico Autry is not going to play. He's been ruled out officially. Elijah Molden also will miss this game out of the Titans secondary, and Jeffrey Simmons is going to be questionable for the game. The good news for the Titans is Ben Jones is back. He's playing. He's cleared concussion protocol, and that's big because the Titans' run game, without their veteran center, is barely averaging over 2 yards per carry. They need that in a big way if they want to translate their identity on the road against one of, if not the best team right now in the league in Philadelphia. The balanced offense.
I think even without Danico Autry, the Titans have the ability defensively to put a stranglehold on the Eagles' run game to an extent too, which is very good. So then that's going to cause a matchup of who's got the better passing game if you're forced to pass. And A.J. Brown is on the Eagles, and Devontae Smith. And that's not a great sign for the Titans in this one. I really think the Eagles win pretty easily in this game. I think it's a double-digit Eagles win. Now, the good news for the Titans, you mentioned 10 being that magic number possibly of the AFC. The Titans are 2 wins over the Jags and 1 win over the Texans away from getting 10 wins. When you look at the rest of their schedule.
They don't even need 10 because they're going to win the division. I'm talking about the wild card.
Yeah.
You need 10 to get to the wild card.
I'd still like for the Titans to beat those teams down the stretch, the bad ones that I'm talking about. This is not a bad team, though, they're playing this weekend with the Eagles. And the Titans have yet to really win a game against a probable playoff team. Washington, probably their best win of the year right now, a team that could be in the playoffs.
If you want to view it on how Washington is now, they were 1-4 when the Titans beat them.
Yeah.
With Carson Wentz at the quarterback spot. So, again, that's why I love if you're in the division, you play one opponent early in the year, and then you get that same opponent later in the year, instead of what we're going to see with the Commanders and Giants. They're going to play twice over the next 3 games. And this is an example in the NFC, 1 o'clock kickoff in New York, in Jersey, the Commanders on the road, identical records, and you're looking at an opportunity now for the Commanders to continue their winning ways. The Giants are coming off the loss on Thanksgiving to Dallas, and you have a Commanders team that's getting Chase Young back. You have Heineke playing at a high level. You have a couple different receiver options that show up week in and week out, and a young rookie in Brian Robinson that's doing more and more in the run game weekly. They know exactly their style and mentality on how they're going to go about winning games, and their defense is becoming even better by the game. And meanwhile, the Giants are trying to hold things together injury-wise, and they're hoping Saquon Barkley just goes on another tear the way they did to start the season, which is totally possible, by the way.
Yeah, who would have thought in the preseason this would be a big game in December between the Commanders and Giants? And the
2 big games for them.
Yeah, and it's going to be a duo. 2 big games down the stretch between these teams. That Commanders' defensive front is daunting, even without Chase Young. And add Chase Young to the mix. Yeah. That is a stout front for Washington. Taylor Heineke, can he continue what he's getting going with that mojo we've seen before with him? Also, I feel like if I'm trying to buy stock in one of these, I think the Commanders are the team with more positive momentum that I think better things are ahead. I feel like the Giants capped. I think they plateaued. I think we've seen the best we're going to see from the Giants. Doesn't mean that they're not going to sneak into the playoffs or win some games here down the stretch, but I like where the Commanders team is headed this year. They're not a team that's going to win multiple playoff games or anything like that, but I like them in this game.
Justin Jefferson and company, they match up against, I would say, the same mentality opposite Justin Jefferson at corner in Sauce Gardner. I cannot wait to be able to go back and watch the highlights of this through the NFL site to watch Jefferson matched up against Gardner, which I'll write about next week. But the Vikings win, and they're clinching the NFC North this weekend by way of the scenarios of winning and then a Detroit loss or tie, or the Vikings tying the Jets and then having a Lions loss coupled with that. But it's not easy against this Jets team. This defense is awesome. And with Mike White now at quarterback, Chad, they are playing a style that allows their defense to take chances. They can stay aggressive. They don't have to worry about going straight back onto the field 3 plays later because of quick 3 and outs. Even if Mike White's not driving the offense down for a touchdown, there's the turnover issues. And White's at least going with a safe play that can at least move the sticks once or twice on a possession. And we were not even seeing that from Zach Wilson whenever they needed to make a big play. The big play can be 6 yards, and you get a first down instead of going for 23 and an incomplete pass and a punt.
It's a big test for Mike White. I mean, this is the one going to Minnesota against that team. If he's able to play anywhere close to the way he did in his first start a week ago against the Vikings, that's going to be a great sign for the Jets. I love Dalvin Cook. I love Justin Jefferson. We need to give Justin Jefferson a nickname equal to that of Sauce Gardner, who he's going head-to-head with. That's a terrific name. I like the Vikings in this game, but the Jets with Mike White, we only have the one game to look at right now. If it's anything like that, and even if it's just, you mentioned the 3 and outs, I mentioned turnovers. If it's just eliminating the mistakes of Zach Wilson and just being, hey, not losing the game, you giving your team a chance, that's going to be huge for the Jets down the stretch.
Keep in mind, the Jets, if the season ends today, they're in the playoffs for the first time in 12 years. And they were 5-2 with Wilson. But they made the move so they can stay in playoff contention and have the chance to do it for the first time in 12 seasons. And Mike White, 3 touchdown passes in 2 of his 4 NFL starts. Wilson had none in 20 starts with those 3 touchdown passes in a game. Dolphins and 49ers.
It's your favorite game of the week.
It is, because we get to see a big flaw of Miami put to the test, and how Mike McDaniel and that offensive staff is going to try to game plan and maneuver and find pieces to a puzzle to solve what is, I believe, the most consistent defensive front in the game, San Francisco. And the offensive line for Miami is a big issue. And the question is, when they are faced with a front like San Fran that can get pressure with 4 and do it consistent throughout 4 quarters, what is Tua in this passing game going to look like? And how much of a necessity is it that they run it well? Because right now, Mike McDaniel knows the path to winning is throwing the football. And they're winning games. They've won 5 in a row. San Francisco's won 4 in a row. But, Chad, they've got to find more balance in order to take some of this heat off of Tua, because he's taking a beating. And we've already seen him miss games. And what happens when they miss games, where he misses games? Miami loses. They win whenever Tua starts and finishes a game. They're, 5-6-0 this season doing that. So I'm very intrigued by it. And McDaniel's done an amazing job. San Fran, though, they've got a ton of momentum. And they are hitting on all cylinders right now because they went through that wave of injuries, and now everybody's back healthy.
I love the coaching matchup, Shanahan, McDaniel in this game, going head-to-head. The teacher and, the student, all of that. I love it. This game could set an all-time record for yards after catch combined with both of these teams and how they play and how they get their playmakers the ball. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill. I mean, go down the list. on each side of the way these teams play the game. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's my second favorite game of the weekend. I like the 49ers. Talked about momentum with the Commanders right now. I like their momentum in this game. This next game, though, Hutton, to me is the best one of the week.
Chiefs and Bengals coming up on Sunday afternoon, the 4:25 kickoff Eastern time, where Cincinnati coming off a win against the Tennessee Titans here in Nashville. Kansas City coming off their win against the Rams, where they turned the football over twice, but it wasn't even a really close matchup because Mahomes and Kelsey kept connecting in this one, going for another touchdown. And we're seeing pieces to the Kansas City offense really begin to flourish. Meanwhile, the Cincinnati defense, they were flying all over the field last week, stopping the run. This is a Cincinnati defense that had a great plan for Patrick Mahomes. Quite possibly the worst game we've seen him play was in the AFC Championship game. And the Bengals worked wonders against that offense. I'm eager to see the adjustments made to whatever Cincinnati solved last year to what Kansas City comes into this game with. And also, Cincinnati's been winning without Jamar Chase. 3 of their last 4 games they've won with Chase out.
Which is crazy.
He's back. I'm still waiting word on Mixon, and I'll look that up in just a moment because I haven't refreshed this recently. We'll see if he's been ruled out or not. But it sounds like we're going to see Jamar Chase back in the lineup. Higgins has been outstanding. And even last week without Joe Mixon, Cincinnati was running the football well. And surrounding all of that is the moxie and the leadership of Joe Burrow.
And Cincinnati has the Titans number. I feel comfortable in saying that right now defensively with how they play that team. This is a game to determine if they actually have the Chiefs number. You mentioned the stats and what they did to Patrick Mahomes last year in the AFC Championship game, but this may be a defense. If they figured out the Chiefs, it's a pretty big step for AFC supremacy.
Well, keep in mind, too, the Bengals won in a shootout in the regular season last year, where Chase went off.
They beat him 2 different ways.
3 touchdowns, went for nearly 300 yards receiving. I mean, it was just back and forth. Burrow going up top for 60-yard bombs against that Chiefs secondary.
Yeah.
Now, you know that the matchup last year in the regular season, you'd have Chase hit, and then Tyreek Hill would take off for a big one.
Yeah.
You know, they'd go toe to toe there, and it was like a tennis match, a volley.
Yeah, and now in this matchup, you've got no Tyreek Hill and no Jamar Chase after what they were doing a year ago in that regular season game. I really like the matchup of these two teams, but I do, because of what we saw in the AFC Championship, because of what we've seen, the Bengals defense versus the Chiefs offense, of all the matchups in this game, fascinates me the most, because we know what Patrick Mahomes does. The question is, can anyone truly affect it with personnel and scheme? And maybe Cincinnati can. I don't know. Is it possible for one team to just have it against Patrick Mahomes, or is it simply at times a crapshoot where you get it going on the right day or he has an off day, and that's why he's not as effective? But there's no just, we've got the formula down for how to stop Kelsey and Mahomes in that offense. This is another step to see if Cincinnati can have some of that against this Chiefs team.
And, I mean, this goes a long way for playoffs, not just do we see the rematch in the postseason, because we could. You know, Kansas City, by virtue of winning this game, you've got Buffalo, who continues to put the heat on because they've turned it back on now. Miami is certainly, they've won, 5 in a row. And, you know, they're right behind KC. But KC, this would be a great win to just continue to hold on to that number 1 spot and have home field advantage throughout the playoffs at Arrowhead, which plays a massive factor. Meanwhile, the schedule for Cincy compared to Baltimore in the race for the AFC North is vastly different. Baltimore doesn't face a team with a winning record currently until Week 18, which is the Cincinnati Bengals. And you've got a gauntlet stretch coming up for Cincinnati, which has already included some really good teams, and it also includes this week Kansas City and others down the road. Point being, if they get KC here, it feels very similar to last year. It was January 2nd in the regular season when they met. 34-31 was the final. And on that day, Cincinnati clinched the AFC North. And by beating KC, I think they're staking claim on the division again, even though it's still going to be a tight race down the stretch because they are a far better team right now than Baltimore, even though Baltimore may end up winning the division and hosting a game in the postseason.
I mean, if they beat them again, I don't know that I would stop there. They may be staking claim on the AFC, not just the AFC North. If they beat the Chiefs the way they did in KC, now going to home to Cincinnati, winning in KC in the AFC Championship last year.
Can they continue their protection of Burrow too, which they seem to have solved some of those issues as well with the new reformed offensive line that's gelled together over the second half of the season. Hit us up with your thoughts at OutKick 360. We'll give some further predictions and picks a bit later. We have a full injury report for you as well for your fantasy football team, your favorite team, maybe the team that you're facing this week. A key player may be out or ruled off the injury report officially. There's a big quarterback involved that I'm sure is on, or maybe, I don't know if Chad, if you have any of these future Hall of Famer quarterbacks on your fantasy rosters this year?
Future Hall of Famer? I've got Brady.
You have Brady?
On my OutKick team, Brady's my quarterback.
We'll find out about Aaron Rodgers. There's news there about the matchup against the Bears, and we will look ahead to some of the other questionable reports for some of the stars across the league. That's all next on OutKick 360.
Two teams went out. One was actually a team from the unit that I now play on TV that was attached to us. They went out. They went on the front side, or went around to go to the front side of this other house, and my team was basically going towards the back side of the house. So very shortly, what happened was it was the wrong house, and when we hit that one house, the actual house it was, which was next door, which is not exactly next door because Sutter City is kind of weird of how it's built. But, they heard us. They were getting ready, prepping, their gear, and so they were ready to go. So when that team came around, a bunch of dudes opened up out of the front, what I assume would be the living room, with AKs and shot, I think they shot 3. If I'm not mistaken, they shot 3 of the members of that team. 2 of them were pretty much out of the fight at that point. But they were, it was heavy. I wasn't on that side of the house, but just hearing it, I was like, oh man, that's extreme. So I ran into the back door, which came into the kitchen, cleared through there, went in the hallway, and those same guys, as we approached that room, shot through the walls of that hallway, shot the guy literally right next to me. So then we backed off, and then we were and I'd have to draw it out, but we were in a tactical position that was just there wasn't a lot we could do. So we were trying to kind of figure out how to solve it. And the next thing I know, I remember just the whole room, or actually it wasn't really a room, it was the hallway, so it was more like a tube straight at me, and just everything exploded. And I actually remember hitting the ground and looking up down the hallway. And I was just confused. I didn't know what had happened. And I can say, getting shot at, okay. It's one thing, but the explosion made me feel small. It was like a superhero just grabbed me and was like, or it was like the Hulk grabbed me and was like, it felt like a supernatural power. And it blew, so it was a nighttime hit. It blew my nods and my nod mount off my face. So I went from, under nods to not being able to see anything. It obviously, my arm, I thought it blew off. I'm trying to think of what else it wrecked, but wrecked several things. But and everything was pitch black for me, and I really didn't know what was going on. I just felt my arm was blown off, so I got up and walked outside to the back, and there was a wall that we had hopped to get in. That wasn't happening, so I just put my back against the wall and tried to take care of myself. But I never lost consciousness. The only time actually I did lose consciousness is when, and I still to this day don't know how they got me over that wall. I have no idea. But other than that, probably 5 minutes that they got me over the wall, I never lost consciousness.
Former U.S. men's national team member and Soccer Hall of Famer Paul Caligiuri will join us coming up in about 9 minutes from now. We'll talk World Cup, the matchup against the Netherlands, and much more. OutKick 360 rolls on. Your NFL injury report, chock full of updates on quarterbacks and some star players throughout the league. Justin Fields is officially off the injury report for the Chicago Bears. He will start against the Green Bay Packers at Soldier Field this Sunday. So will Aaron Rodgers, who owns the Chicago Bears.
Yes, he does.
He
said it, and it's true.
On the injury report, but has no injury designation. That means he's the starter for Green Bay as they travel to Chicago. Travis Etienne should be able to give it a go Sunday for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's got a foot issue that he's been dealing with. Should be able to get back in the lineup. This week they're on the road against the Detroit Lions. Here are the players ruled out. Mike Williams, receiver for the Chargers, will miss again. David Njoku, Brandon Cooks, and Derek Stingley for the Texans will miss the matchup against the Browns. And for the Titans against Philadelphia, and big for interior defensive line push against Jalen Hurts and that RPO game, Danico Autry is going to miss another game. This is his third consecutive game missed. And Jeffrey Simmons is questionable with an ankle issue that's not going away anytime soon. And he was affected last week. I thought for the first time you could really notice how much it was bothering him. And I think it also didn't help that Autry wasn't playing next to him.
Yeah.
So
a lot more focus on him now without Autry. Not a good thing for the Titans.
And I mean,
and coupled with the ankle injury,
this is the best offensive line in football, Philadelphia. So they need their stars up front to play like they're capable of. Simmons and Autry do when they're ready to go. Here's hoping that Simmons can rise to that level with the ankle. Bad news, though, for Green Bay. David Bakhtiari, appendectomy.
Ooh.
He's out this week. So left tackle for Green Bay, who has had a very unfortunate injury history. Rodgers is without Bakhtiari in this matchup against Chicago.
That's also eliminates another pass catcher for Aaron Rodgers, who we saw in the Detroit game where he threw interception trying to get it out to Bakhtiari.
That's right, yeah.
Another weapon out of there for Green Bay.
Receivers questionable. Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton has a illness. And speaking of that, Traylon Burks missed practice this week with an illness. So the bug's going around like the Netherlands roster, I guess.
Have you seen the video of the Traylon Burks? His first career touchdown for the Titans came on a fumble return in the recovery in the end zone from Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
But the video where he's going off the field and he apologizes to Mike Vrabel and he says, I didn't do a good job there. And he said, well, what are you talking about? I said, he knocked the ball out, Cam Taylor-Britt, because I didn't have the block down the field on him. And he said, well, you know what else you did? You ran hard the whole way, and you got it. He's like, you're gonna make mistakes. We move on, and you keep playing hard and running hard. So it was a pretty cool moment.
May not see
odd way to score your first touchdown in your career.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good trivia question.
Yeah. If he goes on to a great career years later, we'll have to throw out the question. How did Traylon Burks score his first ever touchdown?
If he's a bust, then you just reference his contribution was recovering fumbles.
Remember the guy the Titans traded A.J. Brown to draft in the first round? Yeah, he had 2 touchdowns in his career, and one was a fumble recovery. Yeah, hopefully for the Titans that's not the case.
Matthew Stafford.
Because he is getting better and better.
Matthew Stafford has clear concussion protocol again, but he's not going to start. Wolford's going to start for the Rams. Again, they're already down Aaron Donald. Stafford's not starting. Cooper Kupp's out for the season. This is a wash.
Pack it up.
They're doing that.
It's time to just go ahead and pack it up if you're the Rams.
It's time to unpack the game plan, how we beat the Netherlands over the next hour. We'll dive into that. We're going to tell you what we're going to be doing for the game tomorrow. And when we come back, Paul Caligiuri is going to join us. We'll reminisce on World Cup teams from the past, the great ones he's played with, and the one we're going to be watching tomorrow, the expectations as we take on the Dutch. That's next on OutKick 360.
It's time to get anti-Dutch.
What's up? It's Hutton from OutKick 360, and it is time for the 3 in 60. 3 questions, and I have 60 seconds. Let's do this.
If you could never watch football again, what sport are you going all in on?
Basketball, but college basketball, 100%. And I already am, but not the NBA. College hoops over anything related to hoops.
What do you pour first, the milk or the cereal?
The cereal. Cereal killers pour the milk first and then put the cereal in. It's perfect, and I then eat it within 60 seconds.
Budweiser has a lot of beer that it can't sell at the World Cup, and they've decided to give it all to the country who wins. Who do you think is getting all the beer?
I mean, it's not going to be Argentina anymore, right? Either way, the Saudis are probably going to keep it for themselves. So it has no meaning on who wins the World Cup.
Would you rather be hot or cold for the rest of your life?
Way rather be cold. I am someone who hates the heat. I'm a sweater. It's not pretty, and it doesn't stop until it's completely finished and the system has been flushed. So I'd much rather be in the cold than the hot.
Would you rather be stuck on a broken ski lift or a broken elevator?
A broken ski lift, because at least I can get some fresh air. It would be a little bit claustrophobic being stuck on an elevator.
And lastly, on October 7th, I asked you to make a prediction of who Tom Brady was going to end up with and who Giselle was going to end up with. You got pretty close with Giselle. You said a fashion photographer named Gilberto. Almost nailed it. Do you want to revise your answer for Tom Brady? You originally said a 24-year-old Instagram model. Here's another shot.
I would like to revise it. The answer is Taylor Swift.
Getting you ready for a big sports weekend with the U.S. men's national team, USA and the Netherlands at the World Cup. The knockout round tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern. Conference championship weekend will be upon us tonight. USC, Utah will give thoughts on that this hour. And the other kickoffs, which will happen tomorrow. And then what's going to be a fun NFL slate. All that and more over the final hour of OutKick 360. Glad you're with us. 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, Deion Sanders, it's a $5 million per year annual offer from Colorado to take the job. That's being reported now through CBS Sports. And
isn't it interesting that all the reports around this are just about Colorado wanting him and not his interest in the job or taking the job?
Well, yes, but
this came out a week ago that Colorado had offered him. Now we're getting details on the amount of money, but we haven't heard anyone say Deion Sanders likely to take the Colorado job or anything about all of that, right? He talked with USF also. I know that's been reported.
Yes, but I don't know if an offer was made.
Yeah, and a sticking point, though, with Deion Sanders, I think he walked away from it because I read a report that he wanted say over the building of the new football complex, and they weren't willing to give him that. That he wanted to dictate how that was going to be drawn up and how it was going to be done.
Well, I mean, this is just where, I guess Colorado's just in a position where it's like, hey, we want you. We're going to wait. We're going to continue to try to negotiate the, different incentives that would bump up some salary here. And, Chad, it's also, it's not like people are beating down the door to become the next head coach of Colorado. That's part of the issue here is how much money would you have to offer to get the guy you actually want to go coach there?
Well, it's also it's not a bad move for Colorado if they're, in fact, the side leaking this story to get it out there.
It's a CBS affiliate out of Colorado.
Right, because they're saying, like, look, we're trying to play ball here. We're in the business of making this football program good. We're offering a lot of money to Deion Sanders. They're swinging for the fences. I like the move. I hate the move with Georgia Tech not going after him, but I love that Colorado's trying to make a splash. They're at least making the attempt.
And, they're playing in the SWAC championship game, so they're also trying to stay the course, to keep the focus there on the game.
Yep.
Before Deion takes a job. But he has confirmed he was offered.
Yeah, it's just the reporting on it is interesting because it's all about the offer and now the money in the offer. Nothing about Deion Sanders' interest one way or the other.
Former U.S. men's national team member and, of course, Soccer Hall of Fame member for the United States. Paul Caligiuri joins us on OutKick 360. World Cup action tomorrow, knockout round as the United States takes on the Netherlands. Paul, thank you for the time. Hope you're well. All right, we will get back with him in a moment. Should we try him again? All right, maybe not.
Paul, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
All right, there we go.
There he is.
Yes.
All right, guys.
How are things, man?
Everything's great. I'm excited about the World Cup and definitely about Team USA.
Hey, so the confidence level from your expertise here going into the World Cup versus what you've seen now to get to the knockout round and the matchup against the Netherlands, where are you now compared to where we were about, a week, 10 days ago?
Well, it's a fair question to ask. I was always confident about this team. Very talented group of players. And I'm confident about Coach Greg Berhalter and his knowledge of the game and how he's bringing this team together. So I'd say that, it was a little unpredictable how the results would go. But now that we're at this stage, I'm pretty accurate on the same confidence I was when we started the tournament.
So when you scored the goal to get Team USA into their first World Cup in 40 years, to that 1990 World Cup, seeing where U.S. soccer was then from a development standpoint, just nationally, the sport, and now seeing where it is now, what are your thoughts about the gap between those? The gap between 1950 and 1990 and that team you were on to get there, and now the other gap, 1990 to 2022, what soccer in America looks like now as opposed to then?
Well, it's amazing. First we start off with a very strong domestic league with Major League Soccer. We've played in, 8 World Cups. The women have won World Cups. And certainly we're at a different stage now where we're looking at this team not only to compete, but also to get some victories. And I think that, a lot of Americans are very confident with Team USA going against Netherlands, where perhaps 30 years ago we weren't in that same mindset.
So this is the youngest team, the Americans, youngest team in the World Cup. Can that be a benefit for this group? I don't think they're playing with pressure on them in this match per se, but a group that may not even know much better that's going out there in a match like this. Could this be a benefit for the Americans?
Well, we do see a lot of young players in the World Cup. Obviously, Spain, they fielded 3 different guys at one stage, 18 years old. And it seems like that's the common thread now. But certainly these guys are young, but they're mature, they're experienced. And most importantly, they've played together for a while in different opportunities with the national team. So I think it's the chemistry that really works. And, certainly there's players like Pulisic and Tyler Adams that are really leading this team to victory.
Paul Caligiuri, our guest on OutKick 360. We're discussing, of course, his great career, but also the matchup coming up tomorrow between the United States and the Netherlands. What's the overall game plan tomorrow compared to what we've seen from this U.S. team in the previous matchups so far? And what does the Netherlands do so well that we are going to have to try to combat from the game plan perspective here?
It's a very interesting question because first and foremost, it seems like every half, the first half, we seem to dominate. And in the second half of the opening games, we've kind of let up the gas pedal. And I think that is accredited to how we adjust in those games in the second half, particularly not seeing Sergio Dest or Robinson attack as much and push up into the midfield, into the attack. They drop back more, and it kind of allows the other team to play a little bit. I think, this is the knockout stage. It's a whole different ball game, and I think that the Team USA will see a outlook more like we saw against England. I think the guys are going to be high flying. The one positive note here is Sergio Dest. Obviously, he comes from Holland originally, so he's very familiar with it, Sergio Dest. And also Coach Greg Berhalter. I mean, he's played many, many years in the Netherlands. He's very familiar with their 4-3-3 system. I think the key player for the Netherlands is De Jong. We need to kind of take him out of the game. He's a very smart, quick little playmaker. And I think with Tyler Adams, it's going to be a great matchup.
When you saw the injury to Christian Pulisic, what did you think? And I'm curious, have you ever been in a similar situation on the pitch with an injury like that? Because it's pretty clear to see exactly what happened the moment it happened with him. And the good news is he's set to play in this match tomorrow.
Well, first off, I was, I screamed ouch watching the game.
Yes, we all did.
Yeah. And we're happy to see him bounce back, and he's going to be eligible to play, and he's healthy to play tomorrow. But no, fortunately, I have not received an injury like that, but I've been around a lot of teammates that have. And it takes the lifeline out of you a little bit. But I'm happy to see how the Team USA reacted in that game with him leaving the pitch, and obviously more excited at the fact that he'll be on the pitch tomorrow and striving for a victory against the Netherlands.
I don't want to look too far ahead because there is the big match tomorrow, but in 2026, the United States will host the World Cup. How is this group, this roster, with a lot of that youth, set up for the hosting of the World Cup in 2026?
Yeah, it's a great blend. And we also have many young players coming out of Major League Soccer or other places in the world where they find their professional careers. So I think that, hosting the World Cup in almost 3.5 years away, it's not too far away, but it does play in our favor. And obviously, when we get a victory tomorrow, it's going to play into more favor. And if we look one step further, I think all anticipation is another great match in the quarterfinals. Provided Argentina beats Australia, we'll face Argentina, and it'll be a great matchup.
Paul Caligiuri, our guest, and behind him is the 1990 World Cup poster. It's the same poster that our producer, Colin Warner, owns, and it has at his home, Paul. You certainly have different memories when you look at it. What do you think of when you see the team behind you?
Those guys are my brothers, you go through something like that, you remember these guys for lifelong. And, I'm just fortunate and blessed that I could stay in contact with these guys, and it brings back a great memory. And I'm proud to hear that you're
yeah. He was elated when he saw it. He knew exactly the year. He's like, here's how I know, because I also have the same poster. Yes.
Right on, John.
Hey, we always hear experiences for athletes representing our country at the Olympics. What is it like to represent the country at a World Cup?
It's almost unbelievable, but certainly when you have that mindset and in your heart and your soul, everything that goes into it, knowing that you're representing your country, you feel like you're carrying the country with you and they're pushing you forward. And I know that what Team USA is thinking right now in Doha, they know that the United States is behind them. They know there's millions and millions of fans that are pushing for them, and that helps. That's beyond the 12th player on the pitch, and it's undescribable. It's a great feeling, and I'm getting chills talking about it, but I'm also getting chills for the team tomorrow as well.
You think the flu issue plays a big factor for the Netherlands roster?
Everything plays a factor when it comes to the World Cup, but obviously, when it comes down to the game, the opening whistle to the final whistle, what matters is what happens on that field that game day. And you really don't need to motivate any player, not even if he's on the roster or a player that's contributed in any which way. These guys are going to be on all cylinders, and there's great plays in the game, and there's also big mistakes. So we look for those, and in today's matches, you didn't see any critical mistakes, but certainly we've seen that throughout the World Cup. And I believe in these guys. I believe in their experience. We mentioned they're young, but this is an experienced group in terms of their international play and their professional careers. So I'm excited to see how we come out tomorrow and take on the Netherlands.
I don't know, Paul, if you've seen the video of the English watch party in London when the draw was final against the Americans, but pints were being thrown from the rafters and people were pissed. And they were throwing things left and right. And I immediately thought, man, this is how Americans are viewed in soccer internationally, right? I mean, that's also, it's a very good English side. I get all of that, but you tie and, we tied the Americans, let's throw beers now and get angry. Did you feel that disrespect internationally when you were coming up, when you were competing for the U.S. men's national team at all?
I have, and it primarily happens in our region, in the CONCACAF region, when you're playing away games. And, it goes beyond life. I think this is the soul of life in this world. This round brawl is the only thing that brings us together, and the World Cup is just an extraordinary event. But certainly no one wants to lose to the Americans. We're a superpower in every facet, and this is the one element we're trying to vie to become a superpower in as well and win a World Cup.
Chad, you're bought in. We're winning tomorrow. We're the superpower tomorrow.
I'm all in. I'm also all in of being anti-Dutch until this match is over at some point tomorrow morning. So I'm all in with this team, and I'm hoping for a matchup in the quarterfinals against Argentina. Wouldn't it be some story, Paul, if it was Netherlands and Argentina and the Americans could win both to get to the semifinal against those two powers?
I would say that, these opponents we're talking about, they fear us more than we fear them because of the fact that their own fans, like you mentioned, don't want to lose to America. They can't believe they could lose to the United States. And Americans know that, and we take that to our advantage to the pitch. And certainly, the pressure's on the Netherlands, not us. And, I remember back in 1995 when I was in Uruguay, it was my 100th cap for the U.S. national team, and we were playing in Copa America. And in our group play, we played Argentina back when they had Batistuta and Ortega, and we've never beaten Argentina. In that game, we beat Argentina 3-0. And, we were in Uruguay, but on the border to Argentina, so all the fans were Argentine. And literally the next day, it seemed like we won the entire Uruguayan country over. They loved us and gave us a parade outside. Yeah, it was amazing. So, I think these countries, they know that we could take them on. They fear us. They do believe that if they do lose to us, it's a disaster in their country. It's an amazing culture, this sport. And certainly we have the momentum, and I believe that we're going to get a win tomorrow.
Same here. Let's go. Let's Team USA and Chad. Let's ruin some weekends in the Netherlands.
Yeah. It's going to be a bad time in Amsterdam. That's what I know. That's it. There's rarely a bad time in Amsterdam. It's about to be a bad time in Amsterdam.
Paul, thank you, man. We appreciate the insight. Great to catch up with you, and hopefully we can do this down the road.
Yeah, for sure. I wish you guys all the best and keep doing what you're doing. Great job.
Yeah, Thanks, man. Paul. Thank you. There's Paul Caligiuri. The experience with the World Cup.
I like that word
awesome.
of support at the end from him too. That was nice.
Yeah.
You don't get that often.
And I like the fact that
we don't hear that we're doing a good job often. I like hearing that from Paul.
Yeah,
thank you, Paul. Appreciate that.
He's also
brightened my whole weekend.
The stress level is amplified on the opposite side.
Yes,
because in some cases you're going to have more than beers thrown.
It's a
depending on who you lose to.
It's one of those no win situations in that if you win, it's relief. It's not joy. It's
like, we made it through.
Thank God we didn't blow it against
saved
the
Americans.
Embarrassment.
Yes. Yeah.
So we got past the possible embarrassment of losing to the U.S. and we get to play on. I think there's a lot of truth in what he's saying with that. And rarely do you think of it because as Americans, we're always asking the question, why can't we be great at this?
Right.
The way we're great in almost everything else. And you're trying to get to that point. But then the rest of the world looks at it like, you can't lose to them if you're a power, right? Especially in a World Cup. So I see the pressure being on the Netherlands.
I wonder, a win or two now with the young roster that we have, what that means moving forward for what you're discussing, which is become more of the expectation than the exception to the rule if you were to win and get to the round of 16, right?
And I've always thought about, what would a World Cup final featuring the United States look like from a ratings perspective in America?
Yeah.
Something we've never seen.
Or just globally.
Yeah, but I'm just for this country's purposes, how uniting that would be, right? You think of those, uniting moments where we're divided, but everybody comes together. The Miracle on Ice is the one that immediately comes to mind on that as just a huge event for the United States. That would be a pretty big one.
Yes.
If Team USA could make that happen.
Coming up, we will go back to the gridiron, and the transfer portal is opening up across college football officially on Monday. We've got some names that are already entering the portal for you from a quarterback perspective. We'll let you know about that. We've got two NFL teams that face must-win situations in Week 13 coming up on Sunday. We'll tell you why. And we'll start with college football and tonight's Pac-12 championship matchup, USC and Utah, and how Utah comes into the game winning 4 of the last 5 against USC. But USC, after winning 4 games a year ago, can be right back in the mix on the national stage. They're finishing the season where Tennessee was to begin the season, back in the national spotlight, and with a Heisman Trophy capable and, quite honestly, odds-on favorite now with Caleb Williams. We'll discuss that and the impact of tonight's game against Utah next on OutKick 360.
Trent Dilfer just won another state title as the head coach of Lipscomb Academy in his final game as the head coach at Lipscomb Academy. Headed to UAB. News got out this week that you're now a college head coach. What are the emotions? As of tomorrow. Unofficially, as of Tuesday at like 11:15 p.m. You didn't want news to get out. And we talked about that on the broadcast today. How did you approach it? And we certainly saw how your team responded to it.
It was disappointing, obviously, but I wanted to handle like what I've been preaching this community for 4 years is control what you can control and trust the humans within this program. So I made a decision late Tuesday night that I would wake up and address the team first. I'll be honest with them like I've been honest about everything. And trusted their character and the leadership, senior leadership, coach leadership, and it was amazing. Yesterday will go down. Yesterday was exponentially better than today. I'll put it in perspective. Yesterday was one of the finest moments of my life to see a group of people who were hurting when they hurt, work through for 2.5 hours. By the end of practice, we're all hugging and crying. The music is playing. We're singing karaoke. And you could see that they needed a little take care of the shock and awe. They needed to heal, but then they needed to love. And that's really been the theme since the time I told them until the end of this game.
I was surprised when I heard you were taking the Lipscomb Academy job.
and I was surprised again when I saw you were going to UAB. Does any of this surprise you, or is this simply the plan all along?
It's never been the plan. The plan was to retire in Austin and play golf every day, and I did that until 2019, and I was empty. I wasn't fulfilled, and I needed mountains to climb, and I'd gone around the country and led groups and told them that hard things are great things, and the edge of uncomfortable is where you find greatness, and here I am playing golf 218 times, and driving around watching my girls play volleyball, and I needed a mountain to climb. And Lipscomb was a big mountain, but it was a great mountain. And now that we're at the top, I need another mountain to climb. It's hard. It's really hard, but I want a great challenge. I want to keep being a great husband and father, and they'll tell you that I'm better when I'm climbing mountains.
What's UAB? Why is UAB the mountain, and why is it now?
Well, one, they pursued me really hard. I never pursued them. I had a lot of calls in the last 3 weeks of gauging my interest, and I really wasn't interested in anything but UAB. There's a couple differentiators. They have a president, Dr. Watts, who is about excellence, period. Everything they do at UAB under his leadership is excellent. You want that. To win it in college football, you need a president is committed to excellence. You need an AD that understands the impact of football, not the importance. Please hear me right here. It's not more important than anything. Listen, I got 3 Division I athlete daughters. I don't want football to be more important than volleyball. But the impact of football is massive on a community, on an institution, and Mark Ingram understands that. You want a donor base that's proved themselves already. And this donor base proved themselves by bringing football back, and they want to be great. And then you want a community with a big vision. And the vision is not just to win the American. The vision is to be in the conversation for the college football playoff when it expands. And people are going to say that's crazy. And they're going to say that's a big old mountain that you can't climb. Guess what? We're going hiking. And we're going to climb, and we'll talk in a couple of years. My guess is we're on top of that mountain.
Coach, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Congratulations on another state championship.
Thank you so much.
Congrats.
Thank you.
OutKick 360 rolls on. It's USC and Utah playing for the Pac-12 championship. And I think the casual college football fan is watching, you're sitting right, you're keeping up with the championship games tonight and tomorrow. And for the most part, unless your team's playing, you're rooting for chaos, right?
Yes.
I'm not this weekend. Because with chaos, we get more of the same in the college football playoff in January.
Yes. Bingo.
So if you want Ohio State and Alabama in the college football playoff, then you're rooting for chaos this weekend. If you don't want that and you like the refreshing feel and vibe to actually having different matchups now that we can preview and seeing where Michigan has improved and seeing where TCU stacks up as the third best team in the country to a very solid and formidable opponent in Michigan in the trenches, the winner would get the winner of, hypothetically, Georgia and USC. I'm far more fascinated with that than I am seeing a potential Georgia-Ohio State matchup and then, Michigan-Bama and the two winners. I mean, either way, you're getting a rematch of something, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
From last year's semi to last year's championship to last week's game.
I mean, who roots for Alabama and Ohio State if you're not an Alabama or Ohio State fan? And I say that in respect to those programs. They're so successful. We root for the underdog. We root for something new, not for the team that wins all the time. So
I wasn't rooting for Cincinnati to get in last year, though. But I didn't want to watch that game. I mean, right now it's not. I mean, Georgia's the odds-on massive favorite to win this playoff.
Yeah.
Right. But if you want competitive games, but the one team that Georgia doesn't want in it is Bama.
I don't care about competitive games in this instance as much as I care about Ohio State and Alabama having no chance to backdoor their way into another college football playoff.
Backdooring in this case would be fair to call it that. I would say it's going to be a far more competitive playoff for 4 teams with Ohio State and Bama.
Did you not just say you didn't want this to happen, though? Because now you're making the argument that you do.
No, I'm not making the argument. I got through saying, I'm interested to see the 3 teams. That one of these games is going to be bad. But I'm really intrigued to see TCU Michigan. The winner of that game is not beating Georgia.
Yeah.
The winner of Ohio State Bama can beat Georgia.
Well, if you want Georgia to be tested, you want Ohio State as the 4. It's about what you want. I don't want Ohio State and Alabama.
35-17 final in the semi is what I don't want every year. And I'm more content with it this year because we're actually getting the 12-team playoff a year and a half from now.
I just don't want Ohio State or Bama in it, period. I would rather them be out. I'm agreeing with you. I want USC and I want TCU to go ahead and handle business in the Pac-12 champion. I just think from a totality of college football standpoint, if you're going to look at what is best for the whole sport, I think it's both of those teams winning, because then you're going to create a situation where it is the SEC champ at number 1, who's the defending national champion, the second biggest conference in America and the second most profitable, the Big Ten champ in Michigan, a storied brand at number 2. You've got a Southwest team in football crazy Texas and an undefeated Big 12 champion at 3. And you've got another storied program out west, Los Angeles, sunshine and palm trees, USC Trojans at 4. I'm not looking at matchups and what the competitive nature of those games will be because, quite frankly, I think Georgia's going to roll probably to another national championship. But just of a Final Four, it does not get much better than that. Because you've got some new blood in TCU. You've got some returning old blood that's now new blood in USC. Michigan's now stepping up to the plate to where they're, a contender year in and year out again. Georgia has basically taken the place of Alabama for right now in terms of the SEC power and dynasty. I like that field is what I'm saying. But now if you you have to pick what's the most competitive matchup for Georgia, I would say it'd be USC losing and Ohio State probably coming in the number 4.
Bama. I think it's Bama gives them the most competitive game.
But that's not possible because Ohio State's ahead of them and both aren't playing. I'm saying of the possibilities that could happen, it's Ohio State for Georgia 1.
And, you've also got, the question is, do you want to have a competitive bracket or are you just okay with the teams that aren't there not playing this year? Like the TCU getting in is going to be awesome, and they're very deserving. But it's a football crazy state that's not going to travel for TCU to Glendale or to Atlanta. It's going to be heavy Trojans and Bulldogs, right? In both of those areas.
Yeah, I think so. And again, I'm looking at it from just I'm going to watch this on TV like most of America. I'm not thinking about tickets sold or the makeup of the stadium or any of that.
Well, we talk about ratings, and whenever we get these semifinal ratings, we crush some of these matchups we've seen. because they're not competitive.
Yeah, well, you were talking about what the makeup of the stadium is going to be. So I'm saying ratings.
But I'm saying the makeup of the stadium is going to be similar to what it's always been, regardless of the new teams getting in. It's still going to be heavy.
Yeah, again, look, I think I laid it out the way I wanted to. I mean, it's a great cross-section, and you've got 4 conference champions. I think that is a just playoff field. I don't look, I think there's a chance someone's going to get their ass kicked in the playoff like they always do, and that always seems to happen. I just think it's a really, really bad thing when Alabama and Ohio State are in every playoff. And it's good to not see them there one year.
But
I don't think that's good for the sport.
I'm not going to speak out of both sides of my mouth all year, though, Chad, and say that a one-loss non-conference champion Tennessee Volunteers with Hendon Hooker wouldn't deserve to get in over a conference champ.
They would. We're talking about what's
just because it's just.
We're talking about what is possible now, not what's possible 2 weeks ago. And the 4 teams that are there right now is a good playoff field.
But it could still be possible, though, if TCU loses and doesn't get in.
Yes.
Right?
But we're discussing the possibilities. I'm telling you the one I want the most. This is the most just right now. That's why I'm rooting, just like you, for TCU and USC to win. Because I like this playoff field where it is right now.
Yeah, and I do want to see where TCU measures up, quite frankly. Because I've been trying to ask myself if they are Cincinnati. And I think they're better. They're also winning in different ways than what we saw Cincinnati win a year ago. Right, Cincinnati was dominant in their conference and their matchups, and TCU has been outperformed. They've been outplayed in like 3 games this year, where you look up and go, how did they win this game? And there's just something to that I want to see if translates to a matchup against a potential Michigan Wolverines team.
Yeah, look, I think that the odds are that at least one of the semifinals will probably be not competitive, and one will be decent. But I do think that if it is USC, Georgia, and then Michigan, TCU, there's also a chance that both games are good.
Hey, man, and I don't know about...
I think both games could be good. I don't think they will just because we've been so conditioned to see at least one of the playoff games being bad, right?
Had I not seen Tennessee's performance against Georgia's defense, I'd be thinking differently right now about the Trojans matchup, you know?
Yeah.
But that does have me a bit... I'm in a malaise there trying to talk myself into USC... their offense against the Georgia defense now.
Yeah, I've already moved past that. I'm on to can Michigan play with Georgia?
But the answer is no. Head. We saw that last year.
Yeah,
after they dominated Ohio State. So that's the other unfortunate part. What an undersold storyline so far. They're about to run it back.
Yeah,
that's the true expectation.
And
now,
this team still has a chance to be undefeated national champion, unlike last year losing in the SEC championship.
Yeah, which also factors in because at this time last year we were discussing Georgia, their dominant defense. You know, what would it take for Bama to get in? And we were discussing, this is great because Bama is going to lose to Georgia. They're not going to win the championship. They're not going to be in the playoff. They end up winning the game, and then you both get in, and then Georgia wins it anyway.
And they both rolled in their semifinal matchup.
Yes.
Because it was Alabama over Cincinnati and then Georgia over Michigan. It's always fun to see a little bit of chaos and see an upset and then start to speculate what's going to happen. I just think going into this weekend, I'm totally fine with USC and TCU winning their conference and those 4 teams being the teams. That's going to eliminate the controversy, right? Because any loss by those teams, you're going to have some form of controversy with the 4. Because now one lost TCU that didn't win the conference.
Right.
Well, let's compare them to Ohio State. Should we drop them completely out of the top 4? You know, that's where it's going to get a little hairy, I think.
Transfer portal officially opens on Monday, and it closes 45 days later, which is on January 18th. And we mention this because the madness is already out there. It officially opens, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's nothing going on right now because Haynes King, his name's already dropped into the portal today. That's not a surprise.
Yep, Drew Pine, quarterback at Notre Dame.
Yep, and we know McNamara, he's transferring to Iowa. He can do that immediately. So you've got plenty of quarterbacks on the move, and that's why I brought it up with Trey, because last year in the SEC, we saw a lot of movement. And the quarterback transfers transformed programs that we thought were bad into good teams. Look at LSU. Look at Tennessee. Look at South Carolina and the way they finished the season.
Yeah.
Plenty of what can Kentucky do now with Will Levis leaving? Can they go find the next guy that's going to elevate them back to the shelf that they thought they were on to begin this year? You know, because that's Will Levis did allow them to get to that level of expectation. They didn't deliver on it. How do they get back to it? Well, it's through the portal. I also think that the portal itself, though, is hurting the NFL stock in the game overall because you're seeing a lot of movement, and I don't think you're seeing a lot of development. You're seeing better fits for a year, but I don't think you're seeing what we're seeing from Williams with USC is different because he followed his coach. And I think the development with the player and coach is going to trend even if you're jumping around program to program. But if you're Haynes King, are you really improving? If you're Spencer Rattler, how difficult is it to transform his game from freshman year to now? And maybe we're just starting to see that. I think that affects all their pro stock and the overall feel of what do we really think of Will Levis? He starts at Penn State. He doesn't start there. He goes to Kentucky, wins, but he's not that dominant.
He's going to the NFL draft now. Yeah.
He's been coached twice by offensive play callers or quarterback coaches from the league that are not coordinating his offense.
Look, I think what we're still seeing with the transfer portal is it's still mainly about the ability to play because these are guys who have been passed over at their spots. Spencer Rattler is a good example, right? Caleb Williams eventually leaves also. Caleb Williams is different because he was going to be the starter at Oklahoma. He followed his coach and the system to the West Coast to USC. But most of these guys, Cade McNamara, go down the list. It's quarterbacks that just they lost their job. They want to go play. Hendon Hooker, he was a starter at Virginia Tech. He got hurt. He lost his job. He transferred to Tennessee. The rest is history. So it's still mostly about playing time and not necessarily about, oh, I'm going to go make more money in NIL. But I do think NIL is a big factor when these guys are deciding ultimately. It could be a tiebreaker because if you're a top quarterback and you're going somewhere else to start, most of the quarterbacks will be smart enough to pick the right fit and the right opportunity to play. Cade McNamara is a good example. But if you've got two or three that you're really down to deciding between, then what you're going to get paid in NIL will come into play.
But by the time you're transferring, you're transferring just for 1 year anyway, for the most part.
Sometimes,
For the most part. You're looking for the splash so you can jump into the league early.
Yeah.
Or get back to the league discussion, which some of these guys have really dropped off from. And if you get the right investment on NIL, you're secure because you know they're not going to overpay for the next guy because they just overpaid for you.
Yeah. Ole Miss is another good example, by the way.
Yes.
They go from Matt Corral to Jackson Dart from USC, and they're just fine. You know, they kind of roll right along to a 8-4 season this year.
Chad, two teams right now in the NFL this week that I think face must-win scenarios based on who they're playing and where they are in the pecking order right now. And one's a division leader, and the other one's on the outside looking into the wild card. We'll start with that one, the Chargers. Los Angeles Chargers against the Raiders. A bad Raiders team that's won back-to-back games now in overtime, and it's still playing very well offensively. They're getting a run game going with Josh Jacobs. Devontae Adams and Carr still care about, they're playing at a high level and spending it, putting up big numbers. But the Chargers are the ones with the expectations. Now in year 3 with their quarterback, with their young head coach, it's time to get back to a level of postseason expectation instead of the back and forth fringe team. And this is a game in their division. They opened the season with the Raiders. They won that game at home. Now they've got to go to Vegas and win. And if not, they're just a 500 team that can point to some injuries, but can also point to the fact that they just didn't deliver on the hype that came into the year when everything's supposed to come together.
Yeah, that they become kind of an also-ran in the NFL once again, which would be unfortunate and would, I'm sure, put Coach Staley in jeopardy.
Potentially.
In L.A. Well, there's already reports out about Sean Payton, saying that he's very interested in a possible opening in Arizona or in L.A. because they have established quarterbacks, that he wants to go somewhere with an established quarterback when he gets back into coaching. So could be one to watch. that game this weekend, certainly one to watch to see what's going to happen there, because that could end up deciding someone's fate.
Yeah, for sure. Also, the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Denver Broncos. And say what you want about that Broncos offense, which is putrid. This is a Broncos defense that doesn't allow many points. Like 2.5 touchdowns a game, I believe. 14, 15 points, maybe. Right now, they are very good. And it's a Baltimore Ravens offense that has not been closing out games. They don't close out in the red zone. They're 50% on the season, touchdown to field goal ratio in the red zone. I expect a tight game. And it's a Baltimore defense that allows big plays to be made and teams to get back in despite Baltimore leading early. They've given up leads at home. This is being played in Baltimore. This is a game that you completely overlook, that you look up at the scoreboard on Sunday afternoon and you go, what is going on with a 17-13 game right now in the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
And with the way Cincinnati's playing and with the easy schedule that Baltimore has, they should be turning on, the nitrous to their season and unlocking the AFC North for their taking. And this is a game you need to hit your layups. This is a layup for Baltimore, and they have allowed some other layups to go to the wayside this year, where they could be running away with this division the same way Minnesota's doing it in the NFC North.
Yeah, I want to like Baltimore. I
do too.
I like the roster. I want to feel good about them.
They just don't close.
Yeah, there's some luck involved, but when it happens this often, that's a you problem. That's you said they can't clutch. I mean, they're not clutch, and that's
their kicker is, but that's it.
But that becomes a coach-player problem eventually. You can't just chalk it up to, man, we're unlucky, or this team just gets bad breaks, or bad things happen late in games. When it happens as often as it does with this team, eventually it's a Ravens problem, not a luck problem.
I'm also behind low key. I want to see Lamar Jackson do well, really well, because I want to see the contracts improve across the NFL for the fully guaranteed type money that owners are willing to divvy out. They won't say that. We just saw one do it with Deshaun Watson. And if you'll do it for him, you'll do it for the top quarterbacks in the league. And the precedent's been set post-Watson with some other contracts, but none like the franchise guys that are about to come up. Burrow and Herbert in markets where the ownership is not going to be able to put money aside in escrow that's required for big signing bonuses down the future of a contract.
Cash poor.
Yeah, you've got to be able to put that aside if you're going to give the fully guaranteed money that's paid out over a course of the contract term. And I'm not so sure that those organizations with the ownership can do it. I mean, they're billionaires, but still, I mean, it's tough to pull $700 million here in Nashville from the local ownership from the Titans to build a new stadium and put that aside. So it's an interesting scenario. And if Lamar Jackson cashes in on it, well, then you've got Burrow and Herbert that can point to Lamar Jackson and don't have to point to Deshaun Watson and the Haslams. But it's going to take more than one owner doing it, and it's going to take more than just a okay season to double down and demand the guarantees.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated to see how things play out with Jackson just from that angle for the future of the league, for a players association that doesn't have much of a say on the overall structure of how they're paid compared to the rest of the pro athletes around the country.
Yeah, I think the key now is watching players like that at the quarterback position, but it can't become a thing where it's just, we feel pretty good about this guy, so we have to give him the guaranteed contract now because X team, and this other team did it also. And that's what they're going to demand. It's got to be a special case. If Deshaun Watson's the first special case, then it's got to be a really special case of a quarterback to demand that and actually get it from a team.
And there's not too many of those guys coming.
No.
I mean, you got Mahomes and Allen who've got theirs, but again, got theirs just before Watson. So who's the next real? It's got to be Jackson to cash in now. Otherwise, we're not going to see it with Burrow or Herbert, I don't think.
Yeah.
Unless Burrow goes on to win the Super Bowl this year, Chad. And then
maybe
we'll see what happens. Coming up, our thoughts on the weekend, final thoughts on all the conference championship games, our expectation for what we think the storyline will be when we return on Monday. That's next on OutKick 360.
Two teams went out. One was actually a team from the unit that I now play on TV that was attached to us. They went out. They went on the front side, or went around to go to the front side of this other house, and my team was basically going towards the back side of the house. So very shortly, what happened was it was the wrong house, and when we hit that one house, the actual house it was, which was next door, which is not exactly next door because Sutter City is kind of weird of how it's built. But, you know, they heard us. They were getting ready, prepping, you know, their gear, you know, and so they were ready to go. So when that team came around, a bunch of dudes opened up out of the front, what I assume would be the living room, with AKs and shot. I think they shot 3. If I'm not mistaken, they shot 3 of the members of that team. 2 of them were pretty much out of the fight at that point. But they were, I mean, it was heavy. I wasn't on that side of the house, but just hearing it, I was like, oh man, that's extreme. So I ran into the back door, which came into the kitchen, cleared through there, went in the hallway, and those same guys, as we approached that room, shot through the walls of that hallway, shot the guy literally right next to me. So then we backed off, and then we were and I'd have to draw it out, but we were in a tactical position that was just there wasn't a lot we could do. So we were trying to kind of figure out how to solve it. And the next thing I know, I remember just the whole room, or actually it wasn't really a room, it was the hallway, you know, so it was more like a tube straight at me, and just everything exploded. And I actually remember hitting the ground and looking up down the hallway. And I was just confused. I didn't know what had happened. And I can say, you know, getting shot at, okay. It's one thing, but the explosion made me feel small. It was like a superhero just grabbed me and was like, or it was like the Hulk grabbed me and was like, it felt like a supernatural power. And it blew, so it was a nighttime hit. It blew my nods and my nod mount off my face. So I went from, you know, under nods to not being able to see anything. It obviously, my arm, I thought it blew off. I'm trying to think of what else it wrecked, but it wrecked several things. But and everything was pitch black for me, and I really didn't know what was going on. I just felt my arm was blown off, so I got up and walked outside to the back, and there was a wall that we had hopped to get in. That wasn't happening, so I just put my back against the wall and tried to take care of myself. But I never lost consciousness. The only time actually I did lose consciousness is when, and I still to this day don't know how they got me over that wall. I have no idea. But other than that, probably 5 minutes that they got me over the wall, I never lost consciousness.
take it around the room here at 6th and Peabody as we look ahead to Monday's show. Chad, what do you think the storyline, the topic is that we're discussing right out of the gate Monday, 3 o'clock Eastern on OutKick 360?
Can I instead give you a discussion point for right now because this just happened today?
Sure.
The MAC champion has been crowned. Buffalo beats Akron 23-22, okay? This is a MAC game happening today. And Buffalo gets to 6-6 with that. Buffalo, there's 82 available bowl spots. There were 81 eligible teams. Buffalo just won their way into being the 82nd team to have the perfect match of bowl-eligible teams for bowls. There's what I'm going with.
Man, what a day. It saved us this agony of a 5-win team.
Hutton, I knew all day. I could see the look in your eye thinking, I really want to know what happened in that Akron-Buffalo
Man, who's going to be able to play in the Birmingham Bowl down in Tulsa this year? It was Shreveport, the Shreveport-Birmingham Bowl.
The Camellia Bowl.
Yes. The Bahamas or Hawaii Bowl.
Yep.
Which is what, December 16th is when we get cranked up with all that?
I think we're going to have a bowl game in like 3 days. There's so many.
Probably. Yeah, it's the most wonderful time of the year.
I think
Commercials coming on.
Next Tuesday, it's going to be the first bowl game.
I think we are discussing TCU and USC on the national stage Monday with what they do in handling their business in the conference championship matchups. And I'm saying that under the pretense that Michigan and Georgia are not losing. And I think we get the 14 playoff that we see right now in its current form. And we're analyzing how much better Michigan can be in another matchup moving forward, this time against a TCU team. Again, hypothetically, that everything's the same. And Georgia, how dominant are they against LSU? And what does it mean for the odds-on favorite in Vegas to win their second back-to-back title with Stetson Bennett? I think that's the storyline Monday from the college perspective. Davey, what do you got?
Hutton, I'm going to go against you right there with talking about TCU because what I think is going to happen is I think Kansas State is going to beat TCU.
Okay.
I'm going to take you back in time, all right? We're going to go to what is considered week 16 of 2014. The College Football Playoff Committee told us, all right, TCU, Baylor, I'm sorry, you don't have a conference championship game, so we're going to leave you out of this one. I think we have the situation happen where TCU has been undefeated in the regular season. They finally lose this season in their conference championship game, and the College Football Playoff Committee leaves them out, but not just that they leave them out for Ohio State. Ohio State jumps them, and if you look back to 2014, Ohio State was the 4 seed. That is going to be the number one topic we're talking about come Monday.
Davey's going with the college football Illuminati once again coming through and making sure that Ohio State or Bama has a spot in that college football playoff.
We will see.
It's certainly a possibility. It's a good point too about the you better have a conference championship game, and sometimes it can come to bite you.
The streak ends, by the way, from the NFL perspective. I think we come in Monday and the Kansas City Chiefs have their first loss in November and December since 26 games ago. They haven't lost in 26 straight games in November and December. I think Cincinnati gets them this week at home. They're playing that well, and they're getting Mixon, by the way, still in concussion protocol, but they're getting Jamar Chase back this week. That's official. He's playing.
Cincinnati, if they do that, Hutton, team to beat in the AFC. Possibly.
That's the topic Monday?
Burrow's boys. Yeah. I'm claiming it right now. That's my talking point on Monday.
And who knows? Maybe
Cincinnati's now the team to beat.
Maybe we're talking about A.J. Brown's deleted tweets as well on Monday because I'm fully expecting that too. Join us Monday, 3 o'clock Eastern across the OutKick Network. Have a great weekend.